Hi, this is Bella, and I'm the editor of the Oxford Review. And I'm here today with Jessica Berg. She is an agency founder and director of Rosecliff Literary. And she is also our guest editor and in house agent for the Oxford Review. Jessica?
Hey, it's so good to see you, Bella. I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Oh, I am too. So, what our listeners do not have any idea about is that we have a secret little passage coming through on the Oxford Review for members where they can actually sign up to get your advice on the Oxford Review. So, they can click right through and they can get all sorts of advice. And a little bit I'd like to say about how I came to know Jessica was that I had worked with several different agents because I was fielding a book in the US and I wanted to make sure that I was hitting the right market. And so I had actually probably worked with about 7 different agents who had looked at my manuscript and looked at my query letter. And it's not that I wasn't satisfied with them, it's just the most information I received and the greatest information that I felt transformed my query letter and transformed a lot of my manuscript actually because she's also going over my manuscript because aren't we all querying? And that's how I met Jessica. I'm sure I was such a handful for her, but I'm just so blessed to have come to know her. So,
Thank you so much for that. I mean, your work is gorgeous. Your prose is exquisite. I cannot wait to see this book out in the world for sure.
oh, lovely. Now, Jessica, do you want to talk a little bit about what you will be doing with the Oxford Review and what you feel as like this is like the Oxford Review, the renaissance of magazines. I feel like
Yes.
so. If you want to talk a little bit about what we're building.
Sure, absolutely. So, I've sat on both sides of this desk, both as an author and now as an agent. And a majority of my work is dedicated to dismantling barriers to publishing and to make publishing a more equitable space. And the way that I attack that goal is by providing you with all of the standards that I think querying authors should have, but for whatever reason haven't had access to. So, in the Oxford Review for members, I am really peeling back the curtain. I'm talking everything from what I see in my inbox to here are things I would love for you to please stop doing to what I think the market might be moving toward, everything, so that you've got a pulse on not only what the industry is doing, but you're also hearing it from someone who is both an author and an agent. And I'm currently an unagented author. So, Bella, when you said, aren't we all querying? We really are. And that's been such a significant change for me over the last few months as I've been querying this nonfiction project is oof, like it's hard not to be in your feels when you get the, thanks, but not for me, blanket email from a bunch of agents. So I'm really trying to bring all of that to the Oxford Review. I love the fact that this is a literary journal that's becoming so much more. After my MFA, I definitely cut my teeth in publishing in the small fiction space in literary journals and magazines. And I've never seen one that includes a literary agent. And so I think we're just, we're bringing something brand new to an audience who I think is hungry for it.
Yeah, and for those of our listeners who don't really understand why this is different, is when you submit your work, usually what people do, and this is what I learned when I did my MFA as well, or we didn't call it the MFA, but when I did my degree in literature, is what we did is you would go to class and they would suggest that just to cut your teeth to try submitting to literary journals because it's not that it's that much easier, but the barrier is just a little bit easier to get into. Your prose still need to be tight. You don't need to really do the query letter. I know some magazines are, really upset about the query letter. Me personally, because I've been through the query letter process, I really actually don't mind if your query letter is jumbled or whatever, and you don't know really what you're talking about, because I'm really digging in and reading the prose. And so what Jessica and I have formed here is I really thought, oh my gosh, I really would like for this to be in two spaces, because what if your work was so great that it got into the magazine and then Jessica saw it as the agent, or we needed advice from Jessica as the agent. Jessica provides all these services on our website. I just want to say the reason I was so drawn to Jessica is because everything on her Instagram and social media was free. And she wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't selling me anything. And I'm like, oh, I'm curious, because she was, there are some that are real selly. And I understand they have a great service and that's what they're there for. And I'm not downing that at all. I think it's, admirable that they're out there helping authors just at all, because these services weren't, anything that was provided before. But what intrigued me the most about you, Jessica, was that you're so humble. And I went on your website and I'm like, oh, she offers all the services I need. Oh my gosh, she can actually look over my manuscript. She can just look over my, just my query letter, or my query letter in a few, 10,000 words, or my query letter in a, 100,000 words, or whatever the packages are. And so for me, I was like, well, let me test the water. And so I think for a lot of our viewers out there, knowing how painful the process is when you get your first rejection letter, to have that voice, someone like Jessica, who's compassionate and gives you straight advice, but in the most compassionate way, for me, it was exactly what I needed at exactly the time. So I started to think, I was like, I wonder if I could talk Jessica into coming on board the Oxford Review just as a guest editor. But of course, I'm a little bit greedy with people like her. So I was like, perhaps we could have you do like something for our people. And so she's going to be working on something at least every month.
Mhm.
Of course, you have time when you're going and you're having to do conferences and stuff like that. And so, but this will be sent out to all of our members on the Oxford Review. And it's just such a great thing to have both people in house. So when you go to query your letter and you're like, oh, what was wrong with it? What was wrong with my manuscript? Or you have a short story that you're like, this is a burgeoning full length book. And I know I have it in me to do that with this small short story. And as Jessica knows, mine started out as a
Mhm.
3,000 word short story, and ended up to be like 135,000 words, which I had to cut down to 90,000 words. So what's your word count? But Jessica, I feel like I envisioned this as, even to where potentially maybe, giving advice on the short stories to let them know where they went wrong on the short stories for those who did not get accepted. And so, we could offer services like that on the website, to where we could look over it and say, oh, this is lovely, and these are the great things about it. But here are some real fixes that can maybe help you when you resubmit either to another journal, or you're working to refine your other prose for a different submission. And Jessica, I feel like you are really the person also to help, show them exactly how to, like, basically mold their prose into what it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, and that's I take that really seriously. I have been an author my entire life, and when I went through my MFA, I chose fiction specifically because there is less money in poetry than there even is in fiction, right? So I was like, okay, I need to really hunker down, and it taught me how to analyze text to such a severe degree. And I think anyone who's an MFA will say the same about their programs. And now being on this side, like understanding that it can't just be quality prose, it's got to be sellable to some degree. And that's the big gap between folks who are submitting to literary journals and magazines and folks who want to come over to the traditional publishing side. When I sent my first novel to my agent, I thought it was exquisite, of course, right? Because I've done all this work, I've been in all these spaces, and my narrative distance was so off. It was so removed and so far. And it took me a really long time to understand, what does that mean? How do I take what I know to be true to my voice and shape it and mold it, as you say, to what the market wants? And I think that's a big point of contention for a lot of people who are writing and submitting to literary journals and magazines, because the market is kind of like that bad word. All the while everyone does want an agent, all the while everyone does want to see their book in the bookstore shelves. So it's this marriage between saying, yeah, you've got this very unique, exquisite voice, and here's how we can shape it so that it lands, so that you do get the agent. The reason all of my social media is focused on free knowledge is because I don't believe that there should be this barrier to entry. I quickly tired of reading query letters that, like, somebody just needed a little bit of help. They needed to understand how to speak the language of publishing, and not everyone has, the financial resources to pay for a query letter review. Totally fine. I'm going to at least give you the framework, and you can apply it. And the reality is, I probably won't be able to represent, all the people that I come in contact with, but I want to get you right for your forever person. And that's my whole goal. And so being here and being part of this, it's not only like pulling me back to my roots. Like, I dug out some of my early days stuff from my MFA program, and I was like, oh, those terrible professors, I'm so sorry. But this is also like, it's so dynamic. I cannot wait for this to really start reaching people and help them, in all the ways.
Yeah, and when of course, I wrote my book in my MFA,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and when I was in the program, of course, I thought, okay, I'm finished with the book. I'm going to start querying, and it's going to be accepted. And the funny thing is, it's taken actually a couple of years to get my prose to where it needs to be. Even going from being a literary writing, and when you're in these programs, of course, everyone loves the literature. We're all readers. We're in this for a reason. And there was
Hmm.
something very interesting that you told me that I didn't think about at the time, that you told me that when you're writing for an MFA, you're kind of in this bubble where everybody's in that literary space and your prose are just a little more purple. And that's okay because or you have esoteric information nested in there that people would maybe know if they're in your program and have done the exact same courses that you have done. But the outside world is like, where is this coming from? And so they feel alien. They can't connect with the
Hmm.
work. And I think that was one of the first things that you taught me. And that's why for me, I was so excited about the free information, but connecting with you on one-on-one was so important for me because it really, I got accused of in a very sweet way. This the first guy that I had edit my prose. He said, "You're very exposition heavy, and you even smuggle in exposition in your dialogue. How are you doing this?" And if Jessica had seen my work before I took a screenwriting class to cut all of that out, I
Mm.
mean, I think they said 15 things in the whole book, and the rest was exposition. So it
My
would have
God.
never gotten published. And so that's why I think you're such a great, thought leader, and you're such a, industry icon to me, that can kind of bring everyone to a place where they feel comfortable, at least comfortable, that when they first submit, it's not as, wily or tattered as we all know
Yes.
our prose can be in the very beginning.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was coming up there, agents weren't on social media. Social media wasn't a thing. There was a big, thick blue book called the Writer's Market, listed the agent's name, their address, and what they wanted you to send. And that was it. No manuscript wish list, no podcast, no interviews, nothing at all. And I felt so disheartened by that. And I thought, this can't be the way. There has to be something else. So, we have so much access now to literary agents, which is great. But it also means that authors who are trying to come over to this space are filled with a new kind of anxiety. It is not the same as it was in 99 when I was coming up because I was like, well, I'm just going to mail these off and forget about it. Now it's, is my query letter perfect? Are my first 10 pages doing all the things? Have I researched? Have I, it's just everything. And so, like, here it is. Let's make it very easy for you, which is what you can expect to see in my monthly columns. I was actually working on next month's right now, and it's going to be a good one for sure.
Oh, I'm so excited. Well, we're about to publish for July right now. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm really excited about that. And now, did I understand? Because Jessica's on Instagram, this is the social media I know her for, is
Yep.
Jessica underscore Berg, Berg, correct? Okay.
Jessica underscore underscore, two
Oh,
underscores.
two underscores. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Had to be.
Jessica underscore Berg. And then are you
Mhm.
on any other social media where they can find you, or are you primarily on Instagram?
I was a big advocate of Twitter before it imploded. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to choose my new space, and it is Instagram, which cross posts to Facebook, but I probably couldn't even tell you how to log into Facebook. I just know it's something
Right.
I'm supposed to do. Uh,
Me
and
too.
no, right? I'm like, I don't really
I feel
understand that
like
space.
Instagram's the new writer space anyway.
Yeah. I
So I
think
think we're lucky to be there.
Yeah, Threads and Blue Sky tried to make a go of it, but it's really been just Instagram. I do have a bi-monthly newsletter that I send out, called Secrets and Slush, and it's really what I'm seeing on my side. And it lets me get into my feels just a little bit, exercise some of my creative writing muscles. And then, I try to list out where I'm going to be, what new freebies they can expect to see in the coming months, because I'm always trying to make sure that I'm bringing new stuff to the community.
Well, let's talk about where you're going to be because I think I heard a rumor on Instagram that you're going to be doing a pitch session or something like that fairly soon.
Oh, yes. So we are
Oh,
in
these are the ones I love.
um, so in July, I'll be at the Writers Digest conference in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I'm co-teaching a master class the day before about platform building and how to make that happen. I'm co-teaching with Paula Rizzo, who is an Emmy award-winning producer, an author in her own right, and a dear friend. So I'm very excited for that. And then I'll be taking pitches and teaching some classes at Writers Digest. I think registration is still open. So I do have a link that maybe we can drop in the show notes if anyone is interested in coming over. It's always such a great time. And then at the end of July, I'll be in Cape Cod, with the Cape Cod Writers Association, taking pitches, reading manuscripts, and really getting deep into craft, which I'm super looking forward to. And In September, I'll be teaching aboard the Queen Mary 2, which is an ocean liner. We depart from Southampton, UK, and then disembark in Brooklyn. And so it's a 7-day writing retreat. You cannot escape your pages because you can't go anywhere. We're on a ship with no
We
stops.
have you contained.
We do have you contained. Yeah. So I'm
And what
so
month is
ready
that?
for
I'm
that.
sorry.
That's September 1 through
September. Oh.
7 or 8. Yeah.
And that's great because that's when everybody's finally wanting to go back up in that area because it's been so hot, right? So they get a
Yes.
reprieve from that really
Yes.
boiling weather. Because in England, most people, are shocked that we have an AC. They're like, oh, they have an AC. What's going
Yeah.
on with them? So you're like, you're boiling. And I have an
Yes.
orangery in my house that in my kitchen. So it's like if you want to fry an egg, you don't really need to turn on the stove. um, but I just wanted to ask you, can you talk a little bit about what it looks like when people come to these pitch events, and kind of unpack that for people? Because for our new viewers who've never, even known that pitch things are were out there, or getting new to the space, or don't have an MFA, but they're a fantastic writer, which you can still make it in the business not having your MFA. And if we can talk a little bit about that, that would be lovely.
Sure. Yeah. But let me just stress that last point that you made, that you do not need an MFA to be a writer and to be successful in this space at all. I am thinking of several of my friends who are New York Times bestsellers, and they're only now considering, should I get an MFA, right? So you don't need to pursue that line of education. If you want to, great. So pitch events are wild. It's usually several agents in a room, and there's a table. The author comes and sits down, and then, no offense, guys, but like word vomits a bunch of things. And I'm scrambling to listen because it's cacophonous. Everyone is talking at the same time. And I'm also trying to track, who is our main character? What do they want? What's standing in their way? What happens if they fail? So pitch events can, the pitch session itself can last from 5 minutes to maybe 12 minutes. And you'd be surprised how quickly that time goes before an agent even has an opportunity to ask a question. So I did like 40 conferences last year or something insane. And so here's how I think you should approach it. Number one, like when you sit down, make sure you introduce yourself, because we often don't have your name. We don't know who you are. If you just sit down and start telling me about your narrative, that's just tell me who you are. Hi, my name is. And then I always recommend that authors would practice this ahead of time and time yourself. Record on your phone, look into the mirror, do whatever you need to do to make sure that you know what you're talking about, because those are the 4 big points that I'm listening for, right? After that, I want you to remember that this is a conversation. So tell me those 4 points, take a breath, take a drink of your water, and let the agent start to ask questions, because this is our first meet cute. And if all you do is just tell me everything and then skitter off into the distance, I really haven't had a chance to figure out if this is a narrative that I'd like to see. If your narrative is incomplete and you still want to chat to an agent, at an event like this, that's great. But make sure that you're not pitching that book because it's not complete. And we know we never want to do that. Use your time to talk about the industry, the market, genres, whatever it is, take that time, but don't pitch a book if it's not complete. And then, remember that agents are people too. And we're not gods on daises. We don't live in castles with, pedestals and all these things. So I want to stress that you don't need to feel as nervous as you do. I get why. I mean, I've sat across, I know exactly how that feels, but we're just humans. I've got gray hair, I've got bags under my eyes, very much a human. And so remember that, right? Because this is the start of a relationship. If it goes well, if I love your pages, love your pitch, and I request your pages and request your manuscript and then end up representing you, you want to know that you can feel comfortable with me, that you can text me without having to rewrite the text 12 times, or you can call me with questions because I'm your advocate. And that's, I think if I could branch this out just a little bit to talk about what a literary agent does, because I think that there's sometimes some misconception, right? I'm not just, I do a lot for my clients. I advocate for you, which means I'm tapping my networks to say, can I get my client in on this panel? Can they write this article? Can I get them on this podcast? I'm also, of course, trying to sell your manuscripts, but then I'm also your sounding board. We'll talk through what your next project looks like. We'll talk through what I think might be a good idea for the market in 2-3 years when this comes to print. We'll talk through all of your career. Here at Rosecliff, we all have quarterly meetings with our clients because we need that to happen. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what I can do better. Here's what I'm seeing. And then in that way, I become not just the champion of your work, but I'm truly the champion of your career.
Right. And can we talk a little bit, just real quick, to narrow back
Mm,
on the pitch event? Are you
sure.
wanting them to come to the table and say, hi, I'm Bella. I've written this book. And do you want them to go right into word count? Do you want it to be a one-line pitch, a two-line pitch? What is best for them to do so that they can be as prepared as possible? Or do you want them to have the one-line pitch and then also their whole paragraph pitch, in case you're asking?
Yeah, I think the order of events there is, hi, I'm Jessica. I've written a World War I historical novel called Ruby Meets Bennett, complete at 90,000 words. The narrative follows Ruby, and then that's who she is, right? What does she want? What's standing in her way? What happens if she fails? And give me all that and just let that sit there for a second, because I'm taking notes, I'm actively listening, and I'm going to start asking questions at that time. If you've got a log line, that's great, but it's probably so condensed. It's the thing that travels easily, but it's not the thing that sparks conversation. So coming back to that concept of this is a conversation, give me those big four plot points and then let me start asking questions.
And then for the viewers and people who are going to be watching this on Instagram, Jessica has all of these packaged little things on her Instagram page where you
Yeah.
can learn to actually formulate what you need. And there's something, Jessica, if you can speak a little bit about, uh, oh goodness, I've already forgotten the acronym, where you want to know what it is, what they're doing, but there's a small acronym for it and I can't remember.
Oh, there are several acronyms for that, but yeah, it's basically, who is our character? What do they want? What's standing in the way? What happens if they fail? So imagine you're a journalist and you're just giving me the five W's. That's really what we're asking for at the start of a pitch. And yes, I have a billion free resources on my Instagram page. I counted because I was doing some back end stuff, and I think I'm at 65 now, and I've got about 10 more to release this summer. So always new resources coming, because I'm trying to adapt as well, continue to meet querying writers where they are. So just make sure that you're clear on what your story is. I just did an event last weekend in Chicago, which was lovely. And I heard some really great pitches. And I also heard several that I couldn't even tell you what the book was about, because the writer was giving me such a circuitous path to follow. And then those were 5-minute pitches. Time's up. Okay, I
Oh,
can't
we
request
didn't
that
get
because
into
I
that.
don't know what it was. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. And I know on your page as well, you talk about word count for different
Hmm.
genres. And
Hmm.
as a writer myself who had been through all of these processes and had actually queried agents and had requests for full manuscripts, no one ever stopped and said, "Whoa, wait a minute! You're a new author. Number one, this makes it different in what your word count can be. It totally makes a difference." And I had no idea until I actually went on your page and found that, and I was like, oh, no wonder I'm
Yeah.
getting declined because all these people are like this. And the other thing was in my query letter, I did not have my word count in the beginning. So I'm sure when these agents opened up my full and they were like, how am I going to get through this, 135,000 word book?
Yeah.
And we all, as writers, and I'm sure you've been there too, is when you're trying to finish the manuscript and you really, it's short. First, it's too short. It's like 60,000 words, and
Hmm.
you're like, oh no. And then you somehow get inspiration, from wherever it may come, and then all of a sudden your prose are too long. The important thing
Yes.
for me, and I found, and I don't know what your process is, and I'd love for you to talk about that, especially since you're querying. This is so incredible to have an agent who is also querying and can really give us the insight. Is when I finished the entire book, I didn't then go and do in chunks. I tried to get as far through the book in an edit as possible so that, and I'm sure you can tell when you've read my manuscript that it is pretty sinuous all the way through, where there's a coherent thread that, it's a cogent argument all the way through.
Hmm.
And I feel like for me that was a really good tip, to just, buckle down and try to do several nights in a row where you're in the voice and you're in the action and you're in the emotion of the book, just as if you were reading it. Do you have any tips to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think that that's very personal to every author. Editing in chunks, if you have the stamina and the wherewithal and you're able to do it, is ideal, because, as you say, you're consistently in the voice and the character, and the conflict, and you're following all your plot lines. Authors often will like get that one chapter polished before they move on to the next, and I think that that's an opportunity, but that could create some stalling, right? Because you just have to get it perfect, and then you never finish the narrative. When I'm editing fiction, I like to do it in chunks. I like to do it in acts. So act one, I'll split into several days of editing because I know where I need to be by the end of act one. And then I'll do act two, and then I'll do act three. And then I'm always looking at the connection points between first plot point, midpoint, and third to make sure that my characters are trending in the right way they need to so that the reader experience is full and complete. I've been giving a lot of thought lately to middles and how it's a hinge, and it's really where the reader goes all in on the narrative. And so often our middles will sag, right? There's nothing happening because we've invented all the conflicts for act one. We know what's going to happen in act three, and we're like, well, what do we do here? So I like to edit in acts, and I'm querying nonfiction right now. So I have a proposal. I have my sample chapters, my table of contents. I've got all of that put together, but fortunately, I have not yet had to write the entire manuscript. Of course, when it sells, then we'll go forward from there. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's a tough market no matter what. Word count, particularly for debut authors, needs to be so close to the genre conventions at this point because publishing is risk averse and they're not going to take as much of a leap on a debut without any sales behind it, right? You can get away with a little bit more the longer you've been in the space, but by that point, you've probably come into this rhythm. You know how to work your prose so that you hit that 90K mark or that 80K mark pretty easily.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to talk about is when you're submitting nonfiction versus fiction, because I actually have a lot of nonfiction authors following me, and I recently read, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I didn't realize that nonfiction memoirs do not sell as well for regular people, and I always thought, well, if it's written like a fictional book. And it has a lot of drama in it. Of course, your facts still have to be straight. That would sell better because that's what I like to read. I like nonfiction in my historical reading so that I can take and manipulate that and make my characters go
Sure.
through those. And I'm a big
Hmm.
research person. I did clinical research for many years, so for me, reading those things is really fun. But I didn't realize how. We just did an article on this. It's like the stepsister of publishing right now is nonfiction, unless it's just straight like a journalistic type approach. Did you want to speak a little to that?
Oh, I have so many things to say. First, memoir is incredibly difficult. And so if you're querying memoir, we need to think about why this book now, right? So it's not just why are you the person to write it, which you need to explain as well, but why this book right now? I can give you an example. I've got a client, her memoir is coming out next February on the fifth anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. She's Ukrainian, and why this book right now really makes sense, right? Because it's not a war memoir, but it is absolutely right. Needs to be in the conversation right now. And even that was a tough sell. We were on submission for 12 months with it. And I kept saying to everyone, guys, like, do you realize this needs to be out there? But, and she's actually somewhat of a celebrity, right? She's got a really significant following, an amazing CV with great credentials, and it was still tough. So if you're writing memoir, my best recommendation would be to understand why now. And then to think about, is there a way you can co-author with someone who has like the professional experience about the things that you're talking about related to your narrative. That's an easier way in so often than just saying, I'm this person, right? Because we know how hard it is to come into the space in nonfiction without a platform. And platform is a moving target. It always means something different. So that's first. And then secondly, you know, because you write on spec, I see this often with memoirists who will have written the memoir and then don't have a proposal. We know nonfiction sells on spec. So you don't have to complete that. And when you're putting your proposal together, you're immediately going to see, okay, well, I have to think through what's my marketing plan? Who am I going to get for endorsements? Who's going to stand up for this book? And that, I think, almost more so than any like platform class that you could take. That's a really educational experience because then you have to step back and say, well, it's not just the work. I need to figure out who all of my people are to help support the work.
Right. And just like you're saying, relevance, relevance, relevance. That's number
Yeah.
one. What relevance does this have right now? And
Yep.
for instance, like my memoir that I'd written was, growing up in abject poverty, eventually going to Harvard, da 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 da. Not trying to H bomb, but just to show. And even that's not relevant. That really has nothing to do with now. It's not a sellable thing. So that cute little thing, maybe my kids can, maybe one day I'll become famous and they can publish it when I'm dead. But for people who are wanting to do nonfiction, and I'm not saying give up on memoir. I would absolutely consider, fictional memoir or lit memoir or literature based memoir to accept in the journal. Absolutely, because I am actually looking for the fundamental. Is it a great story? Is it well written? Does it move me emotionally? What is the deep need? What are your obstacles? Because in our own
Mhm.
life, we probably have more of those than even our fictional characters. So for me, I would accept it. But for long term, for people who are wanting to sub out, they need to realize, what kind of challenge they're up to. And
Yeah.
then also, if you're someone who has a platform and you want to do nonfiction because you feel like you're the expert in your field, well, you
Mhm.
have to establish that. You probably, in my opinion, want to have a huge database for not just followers, but for a newsletter or something like that, where the people who are getting your newsletter, they're active in it. And I'm not talking about like you have 100,000 people that you send to, but how many are opening that newsletter? How many are engaging with you? How many are following you on social media and bugging you? You want those, not bugging you. Obviously, it's never a bug. Like, come chat with me anytime. But
Mhm.
like they're
Mhm.
bugging you for more information. They're like, knock, knock, knock. Come on, where are you? I want more. And so
Yeah.
I think, and maybe I'm stabbing in the dark here, or we have to edit out that word. Maybe I'm just looking in the dark here. But do you feel like that is sort of what they're looking for?
Oh gosh, yeah. I just put a client on submission yesterday who has spent 10 years working as a chef with the Hearst Corporation. So he did recipes for everything from BuzzFeed to Oprah to Living Well, all the things in between. And his proposal and pitch deck not only included all the folks that he'd come in contact with, but also here are my social media stats. Here's where I've shown up as the authority in the space that have nothing to do with someone else. Here's what my newsletter looks like. Here are all of these things, because at the end of the day, traditional publishing is a business. And especially if you're coming from literary magazines and journals where you're writing for the work's sake and you believe in the work, and trust me, I believe in the work too. I write for the work. It's a business on this side of the desk. And so you have to think in terms of now you are a business. And so that means so many different things depending on what genre you're writing. Nonfiction, well, and increasingly so, even with fiction, editors want to know who you are, want to understand where you're showing up. And that doesn't always have to be online. Like if you've got an amazing following in person in your community, you are the person to talk about X, that's part of the reach. Because the reason editors need to know that is because they need to go to marketing and sales and say, hey, not only is this a great book and I think it's really going to sell, but here's why I think it's going to sell. Because marketing and sales, they hold the purse basically, right? Like, because we're all in it because we love story. And so, even in fiction, we just need to know that there is a way for them to make back their money on the titles that they're investing in, which I'm using bunny quotes intentionally.
Yeah, no, exactly. And
Mm,
and that reminds me, one of the first like in-person cookbooks I ever bought. And of course I've, had passed down and I've purchased a few online, but I went to a cooking class and he happened to have a cooking book. Now, where that comes into play is he has an instant feed. He has all these people that he's teaching 4 nights a week, and we're jam-packed in there. There was like 8 of us, in this room cooking with him, this large
yeah.
kitchen he'd built in Charleston. And he's a famous chef. And of course his books are sitting right there. So that is a live revenue stream for
Yes.
the agents, and to be able to sell your book, to say, hey, they
Mhm.
have someone who's there all the time wanting
Mhm.
to, buy these books, and they're, if they don't have them in their hands, someone else is going to be buying something else. Don't you want this?
Exactly
I should
that.
have been an agent. No. My husband's like, too many aspirations. No.
Yeah,
um,
right. Got to rein it in. Yeah, and
yeah.
I spend a lot of time thinking about that, both for myself, for my agency, and for my clients. Like, how do we continue to get in front of the right people? And it's not even like, let's say you're coming from a business background and you want to start writing crime and mystery. Okay, that's totally fine. But how can we utilize that background and the experience and the relationships that you've had there to help shift you over to the next thing? Right? That's the name of the game at this point.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
And I had someone else ask me this, so it's maybe relevant for our viewers. If you're someone who you have, private contacts with famous people, or people who could really write a blurb, say, someone at the New York Times. I do not, but I'm using this as an example.
Sure.
Um, say someone at the New York Times and they could write a blurb for you, and they've already said in advance, absolutely. Or you have the editor of the Oxford Review saying, I've worked very closely with this person. I really believe in their prose. I am more than happy to write a blurb for your book or whatever it is that is that relevant, or is that just okay? It's a nice, ring on the finger, but it's not really going to do any good for getting us to pitch it.
Yeah, so for fiction, we would want to see authors who are already in the space that the debut author is trying to get into. So if you're a historical fiction author, we'd want big name blurbs from folks who are already established. In nonfiction, if you've got those contacts, then absolutely we should be leveraging them. With my client, the memoir that sold, Katya's book, in advance of going on submission, we reached out to a lot of big names and secured advance praise and endorsements from them. So then I include all of that in the pitch deck. And with my cookbook, with my chef, same thing. We have so much included in that proposal already. So flex your networks as much as you can. That's absolutely it. In my nonfiction proposal, I certainly reached out to everyone I know that's adjacent to the topic I'm writing and then said, hey, I'm working on this project. Could you give me advance praise or can I put you down for an endorsement? And you have to get comfortable doing that.
Now, let's talk about what advanced praise means and how do you bring that with you when you're looking for an agent? Is that helpful? Like if I'm querying and I say I'm doing a nonfiction book or nonfiction, and I say, well, my editors at the top, I read for the top 3 literary agencies in the world. My editors have agreed to, endorse me or whatever. Does that work only for nonfiction or also for fiction?
Yeah, also for fiction. When I'm considering taking on a client, if they've got that in their pocket, that's great because I turn around and put that right in the pitch letter to the editor. Right. So it's fiction and nonfiction. This is absolutely a benefit. I'm thinking actually of a client who we're getting ready to go out on submission. And she emailed this morning and said, well, how long do I have to get these blurbs? And I said, I need them in 2 weeks. And she said, no one's going to do that. And I said, I know, but then they'll get it done in 4 weeks and we'll be right on time. Right. So, and she's an established author with a book coming out this summer. And she's been in the space for a long time. It never hurts to have that unless you've reached like Reese or, a book club space where you're that famous. I don't think that Emily Henry is out here asking people for blurbs, right? She doesn't need to do that anymore. But for the rest of us, for us mid-listers, yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay, great. That's actually great to know.
Hmm.
And then I think that some other questions I had were when someone is preparing for, I'd love for, and you and I've spoken about this, but I think other people are like, they get into that space where you go online and you're seeing all these agents and you don't really know what to look for. I believe that you can go online with my query tracker and stuff like that, and you can go on there and you can pick the genre. Any advice that you have for anyone? Because I know some people have a really hard time pigeonholing their
Yeah,
genre in, but it has to be
yeah.
done. So, any advice on that?
Yeah, it has to be done, but let's not get too hung up on the genre classification because it's a marketing tool, for us on this side of the desk to say we know where it fits on the shelf because it fits right here. So if you're unclear about that, I think I know I have a free resource on genre terms that querying authors should know. Go dig through my Instagram or we can put it in the show notes. And then beyond that, like, what is the thing that you're answering? What are the elements? So if you're thinking that you've written a thriller, well, do you have a ticking time element in there that is absolutely needing to be solved before some calamity? If you think you've written a cozy mystery, do you have an unlikely sleuth who's now going to have to solve a crime? Right? There are conventions for each genre that we can kind of hit on and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I've written. And then beyond that, when you're looking for agents, Query Tracker is great. Manuscript Wishlist is great. I also have to give a big shout out to Lauren Kay, who runs a very successful boot camp. I don't know when her next cohort starts, but she has the receipts. She can tell you of the X number of people who have gone through her program. Here is the number who have secured agents, right? And I love that she's able to illustrate that this education works because so much of publishing can feel like smoke and mirrors where we can't really determine the ROI. So manuscript wish list, query tracker, and then just search the agent's name, see what interviews come up, see where they've been, what they're doing, what they've taught, because all of that's going to be information for you as you build out that list of agents you want to query.
Yeah, that's, I think, first and foremost is if you're looking for a particular agent, I've had a lot of great luck just Googling their name, and then you'll see videos come up and you can listen to hour-long videos of what exactly they're looking for. And
Hmm.
Jessica, real quick before we tie anything up, I
Yeah.
want to know if you know what the next coming genre is. I have an idea of what I think it is, and I'd love to know your thoughts since you're really in the space and I'm just a guesser.
I mean, that's tough, right? We're never really going to know what the next darling is. I can say with some assurance that I anticipate Romantice's moment kind of cooling in the next couple of years. We've really exhausted the Fae. The Fae are tired and they would like to go back to just being Fae. Obviously, horror is having a significant moment, and horror in all ways, right? So everything from yesteryear, which I think we could classify as feminist rage slash horror, to like a couple of years ago with The Change by Kirsten Miller, right? Like there's a lot to be done in the horror space, and I'm here for it because I absolutely love the space. In historical fiction, I think we're going to start to lean maybe a little bit more near past rather than like big stretches in the back, unless we're pulling a new story from a well known figure in history. I think military thrillers are probably still out for a while, police procedurals are still out for a while. I think literary is poised to make a comeback. I keep seeing more and more literary deals, which, heartens my literary soul for sure. But what I really think is going to happen in the next couple of years are novellas. I think novellas are going to come back with absolute shining light of a comment because I'm seeing imprints being stood up specifically for novellas, and it fits, right? Like if a 3-second video is too long, why are we asking people to read 300 pages? Like we know we need new readers. Kids are not reading. If we can give them a novella, maybe we can start to attract more people to the reading space.
And that's how Pulp Fiction actually started. And the those spaces where they were
Yeah.
trying to put them in a magazine and leave you with a cliffhanger at the end so
Mhm.
that you're like eager for more, but it was just enough information to make you hungry again. The
Yes.
genre I think is going to come after horror has its heyday.
Mm.
Um, I think it's going to be scientasy. So I think sci-fi
Ooh.
is about to explode. I'm loving that literature is exploding because you know me and my purple prose, but I think scientasy is going to explode because people, I'm like, I don't like to admit it, but I like sci-fi. And I just
Yeah.
recently read that new one about the, the sun and it's going
Hmm.
to blow up
Hmm.
the earth. And so I love sci-fi secretly. I don't like to admit it, and I don't know why. I always think of it being such a guy thing to read, but I
Yep.
have a secret hunger for it. And maybe that's because I stole some of my mom's Isaac Asimov books when I was younger and too young to read them. I'm like, I'm going to read this. I don't understand anything in it, but
Right.
um, but we still, as at least for me as women, we still want to see that soft side of sci-fi where you kind of have the romantic in it. So I'm calling scientasy. We'll see. We'll see if that happens.
Wow. Okay, so actually, what's very funny about that is that I've got an editor call later this afternoon with an author of mine who is making a push into the sci-fi space, and the narrative we're out with is does have romance elements. So that's wild. Maybe you're right.
Yay!
Maybe you're right. We'll see. Yeah.
I can always do fast fashion. I'm good at. So,
Right.
now, what do you think of people if the memoirs can't be published? What do you think of them writing them as fiction and publishing them? Does that ever
Yeah.
happen?
I mean, autofic has definitely had its time in the sun. I think it's a workaround, but I think most memoirists come to story because they want to tell the story as true and authentic rather than a fictionalized version of the events. Social media did so many things to our culture and to our industry. And one of it is that it gave us purview into everyone's lives. So that person's journey, whatever they've been on, doesn't hit as hard as it did 10, 15 years ago. I always encourage memoirists to look at small press. There is no shame in small press at all. Small press is fantastic. You're going to get a dedicated team that are committed to helping your book be a success. So maybe go that route. If that's the end goal is to get your book in your hands and to get it in the hands of readers, there's nothing wrong with small press. Or go become really famous, and then everyone will be clamoring for your memoir.
Yes, that's what I said. In the memoir space, you're competing with everyone who is famous, every
Yes.
large influencer or person who is like an actors or actresses. Um,
Yep.
but wow, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a tough sell, but good, good. And goodness, I had something on the tip of my tongue. I know I wanted to ask you because you're just such a bottle of information. Um,
Thank you.
anything that you can leave everyone with, like, oh, again, I just want to harken back. Absolutely, we will accept nonfiction. I'm a little more on the flowery side. I like very, I like very fast prose. I like something that's, more literary, has a literary bend, but we also actually accept literary bent scientific articles. And
Ooh,
so I got in trouble a lot in university because I started out doing psychology and everything was like, had this literary bent to it. My professor was like, what are you doing? He's like, it's
right,
nice you're giving me the information, but this is never going to get published. And so I published a lot of academic articles, but not the ones that I like to write, right?
right.
Um, and so just leaving the space, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with that you feel like can really, you know, um, give them a leg up on just even the whole process from begin? Let's say someone's just now starting their book. What piece of advice would you give someone just sitting down to the laptop?
Wow, that's a great question. I think especially early days when you're new to craft, there are two things that happen. One, you feel like you are behind because you're seeing everyone with deals, you're seeing pub credits, and because of that, there's this urgency, this frenetic need to like get faster and get better really quickly. And having been in this space for over 20 years now, I can tell you that craft knowledge does not come like that. I can rattle off things. I can look at narrative and find the things because my brain has been in story some way or form for the last 2 decades. So know that you can't rush it and really, really take your time to learn craft. So stakes, conflict, character arc, atmosphere, mood, vibe, all of the things that go into making a good story. And one of the best ways to teach yourself how to do that is to take a book that you love and take it apart, rewrite the outline, figure out what the synopsis would look like, and understand what that author is doing so that you can understand how to apply it to your work. So that's number one. And number two, please never, ever, ever take a rejection as some commentary on yourself, right? Early days, that is so easy to do. Every rejection is just an ice pick to the heart. And I was exactly the same way. Oh my goodness, they didn't like this. That means I'm terrible. That means, I invented all of the things that I thought were going to happen as a result of rejection. And the longer you're in it, the more you realize rejection could be it's not the right piece for the vision the editor has for a manuscript or a magazine or a journal, or it doesn't fit an agent's list at this time because rejection is part of it. You have to develop such a thick skin.
I will say I think I wept a tear the first time I got rejected from a
Oh,
journal,
see.
but I've really gotten myself better because I don't know if you noticed on my Instagram page, which I forgot, I have never bill myself here. It's at what am I? I'm Good Bella. I am
Mhm.
Good Bella. And so on I'm Good Bella, I just posted a whole bunch of rejection letters on
I
my
saw
page.
that. Yeah.
And so it's so funny because I'm now in this phase now where I'm like, oh, I appreciate that. And some of them were like, I don't know if you read them. They were like, some of them were like, this is fantastic. And they were
Mhm.
really like rejections, but with a soft edge,
Mhm.
which made me I was really made me really want to keep going. And then, once you get in that space, you can become a great megalomaniac and really believe you're going to get published and there's nothing wrong with a little megalomania when
Mhm.
you're writing a book because you need it, because it's like acting. I modeled when I was, much younger, many, many years ago when I actually did not have wrinkles and I wasn't pulling my skin up over my head at night so that
Stop.
you can't tell how old I am. But I remember, and I have something on my page about this, is like, at least with acting or modeling, you just really weren't the right thing. And unless you weigh 14 pounds, you're not going to have a really big modeling career. Or, you didn't have the right color hair, or,
Mhm.
you had an accent that didn't really fit the character, or the character was more sloppy than you. You could give yourself all these reasons. With sending your work in, you don't get any of that feedback. It's almost like I wish for the more harsh feedback in some ways. Not really. I mean, I don't want to wish that on anyone, but in some ways, you walk in to a modeling gig and they're like, no, too short, too fat, too this, blue eyes. Nope, don't want blue eyes. No, small eyes.
Mm.
Your hair is too short. Your hair is too long. All of those things, because then these are things you're like, I really can't fix it. And this
Right.
is this is just what they're looking for. It's not really me. So you can kind of keep your ego a little bit. And the same thing with acting. You could kind of tell yourself certain things with that, but with the book industry. So I just want to send such love out to people who are going through this, because it is
Yeah.
disheartening. And the Oxford Review is actually going to start a buddy system. We're going to have a reading group, and
Mm.
we are going to do a book club. So we're going to be getting up a book club where we can read. And then I'm thinking about opening up a space, because when I did my degree, and I'm sure you had this when you did your degree, And sometimes it can not be a good space. So I want to be very careful how I structure this to have people who can sign up to meet with each other online so that they can read each other's prose and kind of work with each other. Because the one thing you have to remember when you're in an MFA or you're doing any type of degree in literature or anything like that is when people are giving you feedback, they may tell you to change your entire lead character. They may tell you that your sub characters need to be the star of the show and your protagonist needs to go out the door. And sometimes they're right, but I had the same thing happen to me. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to make this character even stronger. And so you can take little bits of information that they have. So when you're in groups like that, where you have that space that can be very lovely and very encouraging. And for me, I have such a, one of those complexes where you're like, you have an inferiority complex. So when anybody says you're doing anything wrong, you're just like, oh, they're right. I'm not smart. I can't do this,
Hmm.
and you tell yourself in your head. So for those types of spaces, we really need like groups of people. And what my degree did, and I'm sure your degree did, is it got you together with some people who you could look over each other's work mutually. And sometimes it was like not a good space. So you could move different groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to have bubble groups where you could move into different bubble groups of 5 people to where you can work with different groups you could read each other's work and have like, you can meet monthly or whatever so that you can work in those bubble groups. And if you find a group that you're like, they don't really like my character, I'm not fitting well, I'm going to move to this bubble group. And
Ooh,
so that's something that I'm thinking of. And I wanted your thoughts on, and then I know you really have to go. I'm sorry I've kept you so long.
okay.
I want your thoughts on how you think that helps, what people can do to protect themselves and armor themselves during situations when they're having people read their work. Because for me, even though I had two of the most cruel people that you can ever imagine telling me that, my prose were really not good, that they were, that it's on my character too, and that my character was too arrogant. No one's ever going to read this. Basically, I really needed to just use the sub character or the backup character as the main person. And it was really insulting to a point where I was like, and then I was just like, oh, I'm going all in, forget it. And
Right.
it actually made me a better writer. So I
Yeah.
had that motivation that I needed. And for me, and for my friends, they said the best part about the group that they enjoyed were people who were like, oh, I like this. And most of us had those kind of people who were like, I
Sure.
really like this. I wonder if you could also add this in. And so that way you have like, a more homeopathic way of editing your stuff. I work very well under pressure. So if somebody thinks I'm not doing a good job, I am so drawn to fix it and prove to them, no, I'm a good person. No, I can do this. That works for me. But of course, that doesn't work
Hmm.
for anyone. Any thoughts on getting with other groups of people to make sure that they can review your prose and you have a sounding board because you don't want to be in a bubble?
Yeah, I mean, we love a good critique partner and a beta reader. I think understanding what kind of feedback you're looking for. So not is this good or bad, but does this character, does the character's motivation track what you know about it? How do you feel about the conflict? Does the internal want match the external goal, right? Like get really granular on the things that you're asking about. So you can limit them saying, well, I just didn't like this, right? Because we've all had that feedback and you're like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know what you expect me to do with that. Like, that's not actionable. That's not concrete. So when you're clear about what you're looking for, and I think the longer you're in story, the more it's really easy for you to start to get that sense like, there's something that's not working in this story. I don't know how to fix it, but go ask your trusted readers.
Yeah, because my biggest problem was I was in my bubble and
Yep.
all my family was like, "Oh, this is wonderful. You're going to be a
Right.
famous writer one day." And then when I got in those groups and I was like, "Whoa, they don't think I'm good. Oh no, you get this
Yeah.
thing." But then it made me realize, I had some major missing plot issues. I had a lot of things that were wrong. And so that's what I hope that we can start bringing to everyone at the Oxford Review. And I'm so
Love that.
pleased to have you on board. I just feel like it was so serendipitous that we met and
Agree.
now I'm just like, I sing your praises all the time, and I'm so
Thank you.
excited that we've connected, and we definitely have to do this again.
Oh, absolutely. Count me in. Just send the note whenever. Let's do it again for sure. And if our contributors, folks who are submitting to the Oxford Review, or even leaving comments as they're watching this, have questions, we could address specific questions as well. I have an anonymous question inbox, and it's always over 400 questions for me to get to answer in my reels, because folks want to know this information. It shouldn't be that hard to get it out there. So if I can serve that in any way, I absolutely will.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And by
Thanks.
the way, for our viewers, what she's talking about is sometimes in her stories, you can it says you can ask a question, and I probably need to start doing that too for the Oxford Review. I'll have to
Hmm.
get with you and figure out how you're doing that.
Sure.
And she answers the questions, and it's so miraculous because she'll do a whole speech thing on there. You'll get a whole video which kind of teases it out. And some of the questions I was like, oh, I wish I'd asked that question. So I love that, and I really hope they're going to start watching your page. And I hope they'll read the newsletter next.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great one. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.